adventure, beautiful day for a boat ride. Headed out towards Golden Bridge into the Pacific Ocean for a minute here. The first thing I'd like y'all to think about is how to steady yourself when the boat starts moving around. So hold on to something, you sit back down, or hold on to something that's holding on to something. There's a couple ships coming in and there's passing ferries. We're getting wakes along our route here. So make sure you understand how to steady yourself if you're ever uncomfortable. Also, the bar's open. You want to get something to eat or drink? Check out the bar. It's open right now for you. That'll be open the whole cruise. We'll get that narration going here shortly. Thanks.
We are now leaving Fisherman's Wharf behind. Right now, we're passing a number of interesting sights. Look on the left of the port side of the ship towards the city. You see a large gray battleship. That is a restored liquid ship, SS Jeremiah O'Brien. Next to it, tied to the pier, is a diesel submarine, the USS Mankato. Both vessels were active in World War II. Now look out the right side of the boat, also called starboard, toward the bay. Look for an sailing ship Balclutha. The Balclutha is a steel-hulled, square-rigged cargo ship that first sailed from Wales in 1887. She carried a crew of 26 men, a load of coal and other goods, bound for San Francisco. Since then, her journey has taken her as far as Australia, Cape Horn, and Europe many times over. Today, she is designated as a National Historic Monument. To the left of the Balclutha is a big white ferry boat with a black smokestack. That's the Eureka, a paddle-wheel steam ferry boat that dates back to the 1890s. Before the Great Bay Bridges were built, the Eureka transported train cars, Model T Fords, commuting passengers, and even cattle into the city. Both ships are part of the San Francisco Maritime National Historical Park, also known as Hyde Street Pier. Hyde Street Pier is located at the end of the Hyde Street cable car line. You can visit the park year-round. From here, you can also see the large sign of the Ghirardelli Chocolate Factory. It's atop the red brick of the building, rising above the ships, to the left. San Francisco is famous for great food, and Ghirardelli chocolate is part of that legend. Now look farther along the shoreline. You'll see large buildings with red doors. Those are the piers of Fort Mason, one of several military locations we'll see around the bay today. John Martini is a San Francisco historian.
For most of its history, Fort Mason was called a port of embarkation. It's where supplies and men were loaded aboard ships and then sailed out. And during World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, men sailed out of here for war in the Pacific. And then many of them, but not all, came back again to the big warehouses that were passing.
Today, those piers and warehouses are a hive of activity where some of San Francisco's environmental organizations, theatrical troupes, and small art galleries. To the right of Fort Mason, you can see the Marina District. The road Rows of elegant homes make the marina look like solid ground. But don't be fooled. The Marina District is actually land reclaimed from the bay. It is built on tidal flats that were filled in to create a temporary city for the Panama Pacific International Exposition of 1915. Look for the large, dusty orange dome building set in from the shore. It is the Palace of Fine Arts, and the only building from the Pan Pacific Expo that remains today. American architect Bernard Maybach designed it in a distinctive Roman style. If you look ahead to the right of the marina, you can see the dark wooded ridges of the Presidio of San Francisco. Some say this is the birthplace of San Francisco. Let's go back in time to 1776. 3,000 miles from here, on the Atlantic coast, America's 13 colonies were about to start the American Revolution by declaring their independence from England. Here, on the Pacific shore, Spanish conquistadors were seeking out new territory to claim for Spain. The bay may seem large, but it wasn't always so obvious to find. As you look at the shore, let's listen to an archival interview with John Martini, a California historian.
For 200 years, Spanish ships have been sailing up and down the California coast, but they stayed so far off the coast where none had ever come close enough to see the entrance to the harbor. The first ship that actually entered San Francisco Bay was called the San Carlos. It was a little 80-foot-long packet boat. Lieutenant Juan Manuel de Ayala, in command, piloted the little boat through the straits that hadn't even yet been named the Golden Gate, treacherous, rocky straits, anchored off what's now Angel Island, and spent the next 8 weeks charting the bay and naming the geographical features.
After that first boat came into the bay, a year later, on March 28, 1776, Captain Juan Bautista de Anza stood on the bluff where the Presidio is now. Imagine him looking down at the narrow entrance to the bay far below. On that spot, he planted a cross in the ground and established a fort. The word Presidio translates as Army Post in Spanish, and the cross...
All right, folks, we're going to get a weight from the ship that went by, a big old wake here, so make sure you're hanging on to something. The boat's going to move around. We're taking this wake right here. You hang on to something.
The military strategy. That day, he wrote in his diary that if the bay
could be well settled like Europe, there would not be anything more beautiful in the world.
He was quite a visionary, because the beauty that Father Font saw was more rugged than the beauty we see today. Look again at the forests of the Presidio. 200 years ago, those ridges were barren rock and sand dunes. The first trees were planted there in the 1880s, a century after De Anza planted his cross. Today, the Presidio is now under the protection of the National Park Service, and many of the historic military homes have been restored into housing for local residents. It is a popular destination for hikes. If you like movies, it is the location of Industrial Light and Magic, the special effects company that made unforgettable films like Star Wars, the Indiana Jones series, and Pirates of the Caribbean. Let your eyes sweep across the bay. We are traveling back over 150 years ago, when San Francisco was a sleepy town, on a beautiful bay, in the middle of nowhere. That was 1847, but in 1848...
Gold, gold, gold on the American River.
San Francisco's days as a quiet town were gone forever. At first, the town almost disappeared. Everybody in San Francisco grabbed a pick and shovel and headed for the hills. The editor of a local newspaper wrote in an editorial,
The stores are closed and places of business vacated.
as if a curse had arrested our onward course of enterprise. Everything is dull, monotonous, dead.
That editor then locked his doors and headed for the gold fields himself. But the town didn't stay deserted for long. Young people from all over the world came here to San Francisco. In just 2 years, the population skyrocketed from 500 to 25,000. Look back at the city. Life in San Francisco was truly wild and woolly. At the heart of the madness was a stretch of waterfront called the Barbary Coast. These few blocks were long on action and short on law and order. In memoirs written years later, some people recalled it as a slice of heaven, while others remembered it as a corner of hell.
I have seen purer liquors, better cigars, finer tobacco, truer guns and pistols, larger dirks and bowie knives, and prettier courtesans here in San Francisco than at any place I have ever visited.
A village of every nationality held high carnival there. It was a grand theater of crime, licentiousness, debauchery, insanity, misery, poverty, wealth, profanity, blasphemy, and death.
Thousands of fortune seekers came to San Francisco during the gold rush, and most people arrived by boat. Ships from all over the world tried to get into this harbor. One historian estimated that over 700 ships piled up along the coast during the first 6 years of the gold rush. Now look ahead at the south or left end of the Golden Gate Bridge. Situated underneath that bridge, you see a building. Mainly small beside the bridge, but in its day it was an impressive symbol of strength.
That's Old Port Point. When you get closer to it, you'll notice there are 3 levels of big black squares in its walls. Each one of those is a gun port. Behind each one of those gun ports is a huge cast iron cannon, the biggest of which can fire a 128-pound cannonball about 2 miles. Even the roof of the port is linked with cannons.
Port Point was completed in 1861. It stood guard over the narrow mouth of the bay, protecting San Francisco's vital port and California's immense wealth of gold and silver against intruders. However, no intruders ever came, and like every other fort around the bay, Port Point has never fired a shot in anger. Today, park rangers in full Civil War uniform give tours of the fort daily. They teach you how to load and fire a Civil War cannon.
各位乘客请注意，我们将会接近金门桥下的急流水域，请抓紧扶手或坐下，请勿使用梯级，只是听到船长的安全指示才可以继续在船上行走。谢谢。
Su atención, por favor. Estamos acercándonos a aguas turbulentas bajo el puente Golden Gate. Por favor, siéntese y sosténgase firmemente. No use las escaleras. El capitán anunciará cuando sea seguro el poder moverse de nuevo en el barco.
We are approaching the Golden Gate Bridge. Look ahead out the front of the boat. Today, the Golden Gate Bridge seems perfectly suited to its surroundings, exactly as it stands. But try to imagine it not being there. When plans for the bridge were first proposed, many said it couldn't be built. Some even said it shouldn't be built. Early environmentalists didn't like the idea of a bridge they believed would ruin the natural beauty of the Golden Gate. American author Catherine Gerald was one of many who expressed opposition at the time.
You have one of the most romantic approaches in all geography. Why spoil it? In the interest of your own uniqueness, your San Francisco, not a bridge to the game.
The War Department in Washington, D.C. objected by claiming that it would be a serious hazard to airplane navigation. Well, despite the protests, there were many people who wanted the bridge. First among the supporters was the engineer Joseph Behrman Strauss. He not only designed the bridge, he was obsessed with it. He wasn't a man to get into an engineering challenge or political opposition. Encouraged by Strauss, voters in the region approved the bridge. Construction began in 1933.
The design that was finally developed actually became one of the most graceful and delicate objects of Art Deco art that was ever created. The scale is just immense. Towers over 700 feet in height, the main span 4,200 feet long. No one had ever built a bridge like this before. Some people say we can never build it again.
Look at the tower at the San Francisco bridge. Then look down at the concrete foundation the tower is standing on. This was the first great challenge, building a concrete pier in water more than 100 feet.
All right, folks, hang on. We're going to get a little wake here. Hang on to something.
In the bay the size of a football field. Water was pumped out, and then the concrete was poured. Next came the two towers. When they were compared,
We should be through the worst of it, but just make sure you know where the handrails are.
main cables that connect them. Finally, the road itself was built, starting at both ends and working toward the middle to keep the bridge in balance. It's easy to describe. It was far from easy to accomplish. Imagine working there, day after day, in the cold, in the fog, and the rain. On major construction projects in those days, experience had shown that one workman usually died for every $1 million spent. The budget for the bridge was $35 million, but Joseph Strauss was determined that 35 lives would not be lost on his bridge. A safety net was fabricated and suspended below the workmen, and although 11 men did die during construction, 19 men fell into the safety net and were saved. Those 19 lucky men formed a very special club. It's called the Halfway to Hell Club. Of the 11 men who lost their lives during construction, 10 of them died in one accident when a 10-ton scaffold fell and tore through the net. The Golden Gate Bridge was completed in less than 5 years, May 1937. Joseph Strauss let the world know exactly how he felt.
The Golden Gate Bridge. The bridge which could not and should not be built, which the War Department would not permit, which the rocky foundation of the pier base would not support, which would have no traffic to justify it, which would ruin the beauty of the Golden Gate, stands before you in all its majestic splendor, in complete refutation of every attack made upon it.
Look up at the Twin Towers. They rise nearly 750 feet above Washington. Let your eyes follow the bridge from shore to shore. The roadway extends for 1.25 miles without touching down on solid ground. Look at the two main cables. There's enough wire there to wrap around the planet 3 times. Each strand in the cables is secured to steel reinforcements in a 50,000-ton foundation buried deep underground. Impressive numbers, but numbers alone can't tell the story of the Golden Gate Bridge. There's more to it than steel and concrete. For many, it has become a symbol of America's hope, as inspiring and recognizable as the Statue of Liberty.